Think you've seen every retro PC game worth playing? Think again, because this season dives even deeper into the misfits, the underdogs, and the masterpieces that time tried to erase. First up, we have a game that shares the name with a movie that, well, let's just say it didn't win any hearts or Oscars. The Taking of Beverly Hills. Released in 1991 by Capstone Software, yeah, the same Capstone that later became infamous for its wonderfully questionable FPS experiments, this is actually a surprisingly ambitious action-adventure hybrid. You play as Boomer Hayes, a football star who gets stuck in Beverly Hills during a fake chemical spill orchestrated by bad guys to loot the city. You also briefly switch to playing as Laura Sage in certain segments, which is a neat surprise for a movie tie-in. The gameplay is a wild mix. You walk around in a top-down view, switch to side-scrolling action sequences, and even jump into first-person mode for shootouts. Your goal? Sneak around, find items and stop the heist before the city is picked clean. So why play it today? Because unlike most movie tie-ins of the era that were absolute trash, this one actually tries. It's not the best thing out there, let's make that clear, but it's definitely not the bottom of the barrel. It feels like Die Hard meets an adventure game and it's surprisingly well put together. The fun fact here is that the developer, Of the World Productions, managed to make the game that is arguably more entertaining than the movie it's based on. The Taking of Beverly Hills got buried because, well, the movie flopped hard and everyone else was too busy playing shower staples like early Duke Nukem and Commander Keen to notice Boomer Hayes taking on a small army of goons. Next up, let's change the channel to something completely different – MetTV. And no, despite what it may sound like, it's not a sketch or a game show. This is a TV station management simulation from Rainbow Arts in which you play as a lowly reporter who suddenly finds himself running a struggling TV station. Your job is what you exactly expect it to be – to buy movie rights, sell advertising slots and schedule your programs to beat the rival stations. But the plot thickens. Your real goal is to woo the lovely Betty, the station's culture show host who works in the building, by airing shows she likes. So it's all a balance between pleasing her, keeping your audiences happy and station afloat. This game is pure chaos in the best way. The humor is decidedly German and very 90s. You'll be airing parodies of real movies, with titles that are just slightly off enough to remain legally safe. It's worth playing today because the simulation aspect is actually deep and balancing the budget while trying to get a date is the ultimate 90s struggle. Apparently, I wasn't dating much in the 1991, and yeah, it's a nice way of saying at all. MetTV actually allows you to mess with your opponent's broadcasting antennas, adding that extra layer of fun to the game. It got overshadowed because 1991 was the year Civilization ate everyone's free time, but MetTV remains a cult classic for wannabe tycoons. Jumping forward to 1998, we have a shooter that looks like it came from another dimension – Tsar. And yes, I'm still convinced it's meant to be pronounced Tsar because it's a Russian game. Developed by Maddox Game, Tsar is a first-person shooter where you stomp around in heavy power armor on remote mining planes, cleaning up a full-blown robot uprising. The setup is delightfully sci-fi. A meteorite smacks into the central computer running humanity's automated mining operations and the AI goes berserk. And suddenly, every mining robot in the system wants you dead. The plot may be simple, but the tech is where the things get spicy. Tsar runs on a custom voxel engine that lets you blast craters into the terrain and tear apart structures in a way that felt shockingly advanced for 1998. The levels are wide, the robots can come at you in swarms, and the whole thing has this chaotic, crunchy energy that's hard not to love. So why play Tsar today? Because blowing up voxel terrain never gets old. Also, the weapons feel really punchy and the sense of speed is rather exhilarating. It's got a very specific Eurojunk charm, where it's a bit rough around the edges but technically impressive. Fun fact, the game's sound design is surprisingly beefy, making every explosion rattle your speakers and headphones. Sadly, Tsar got crushed by a little game called Half-Life and the console fan favorite Metal Gear Solid. But for pure arcade blasting, Tsar is a blast. Oh my god, I keep saying Tsar and Tsar interchangeably and it's just a mess. Sorry about that. Staying with Maddox Games, because why the hell not, we're on the roll after all, Let's look at their trippier older brother from 1997, Mad Space. If you thought that Tsar was intense, Mad Space is just plain weird. It's a shooter set in a non-Euclidean alien ship. And what that means to us is that up is relative. You can walk on walls and ceilings and twist your brain into a pretzel. The plot involves humanity fighting an alien faction called Kraken, and you have to board their ship to stop them. The Kraken, not the humanity. You have access to 11 extraterrestrial weapons, a variety of weird alien guns, so if you are into action-packed mayhem and classic games, Mad Space definitely delivers. This game is worth playing just to experience the motion sickness. I mean, obviously not literally it, more like unique geometry. It was one of the first titles to really let the imagination go and experiment with 3D space in a way that Descent fans would love. A crazy curiosity you might not know about, but Mad Space actually supported voice recognition commands in 1997, so you could literally yell at your gun to reload. Whether you could do it in English though, I've no way of telling, I've not had a headset, let alone mic back then. But from what I found online, people say that it barely worked, but hey, points for trying. It got buried by Quake 2 and GoldenEye 007, but it's a psychedelic trip you should not miss. Our next title was actually made by the masters of RPG, New World Computing. So you know, the folks behind Might and Magic and Heroes of Might and Magic. This is a massive sci-fi RPG title, Planet's Edge: The Point of No Return. Its plot is rather fantastic. An alien experiment goes wrong and literally teleports the entire Earth away, leaving you on a moon base. Your job is to build a ship, explore the galaxy, collect parts of the Centauri drive and bring Earth back. Gameplay is split between real-time ship combat and top-down isometric ground exploration, and it's unlike anything you've seen. The sheer scale of this game is truly impressive. I mean, you can build your own ships, you can explore dozens of star systems and many planets. It's fantastic. The writing is sharp and the sense of discovery is genuine, all done up to New World's computing standards. It's essentially Mass Effect before Mass Effect even existed, only with more pixels and less 3D. Planet's Edge includes a very detailed cloning system for your crew, so death isn't the end. It was tragically overlooked because everyone was too busy getting ready and hyped up for the soon-to-arrive wave of early 90s immersive sims like Ultima Underworld, which stole a lot of attention around that time. Now for something truly metal. Heavy metal. It's Metal Mutant. It's an action-adventure game from Silmarils where you control the ultimate battle machine. What's the twist, you may wonder? Where titles coming from, you ponder? Well, you can shapeshift instantly into three forms: a cyborg, which is good for jumping and acrobatics, a dino for a biting attack, and a tank for pew-pew-pewing. In theory, the plot sends you to a planet Chronox to destroy a rogue computer Arroth-7 ruling over it. But really it's all about managing those transformations to solve environmental puzzles and kill bosses. Metal Mutant plays a little like a psychedelic mix of Prince of Persia and Transformers. The animation is buttery smooth and figuring out which form to use for which enemy is satisfying tactical puzzle. I'd say it's worth playing for the visual style alone. I mean, the color palette is moody and gorgeous and the game is a good example of early VGA, but it's worth noting, however, that Metal Mutant is notoriously difficult. Like throw your keyboard at the wall screaming difficult. But it's not a bad game, just one that requires patience and practice. It got overshadowed by cinematic platformers like Another World, but honestly, playing as a robot dinosaur should have been enough to sell 1 million copies in the early 90s. Grab your weapon and a flashlight because we are going deep underground in Dungeons of Kremlin. And no, it's not a Russian-centric episode, just one of you recommended these games and I took a look. Released in 1995, this is often called the Russian Doom. The story is wild. Rogue archaeologists crack open forbidden tunnels beneath Moscow and unleash monsters that are a weird mixture of mutants, wizards and other stuff you'd not expect to find there. You play a digger tasked with cleaning up the mess, so you're kind of an Eastern Gordon Freeman. It's a first-person shooter, but instead of Mars, you're in the dump brick basements of the Kremlin, fighting bats, mutants and spell-slinging weirdos. Is Dungeons of Kremlin a shameless Doom clone? Yes it is. Is it junky? absolutely, but it also has its own unique, incredible atmosphere. It feels claustrophobic and historically heavy in a way Western shooters didn't. Plus it runs on a custom engine that somehow manages to look both primitive and charming. And despite the Russian Doom nickname, the engine actually looks closer to Wolfenstein 3D, so it only features flat floors, maze-like levels and no verticality whatsoever. Dungeons of Kremlin was killed by the fact that Duke Nukem 3D and Quake were just around the corner, making its tech look instantly dated. But it's a fascinating time capsule worth cracking open. From Russia, we go to an Aztec pyramid. It's time for Paganitsu. Published by Apogee, the Kings of Shara, this is a puzzle game starring Alabama Smith, legally distinct, not Indiana Jones, I promise. You explore an ancient pyramid, room by room, and the mechanics are Sokoban style, meaning you push rocks to block snakes, trap spiders, and uncover keys. The story is incredibly simple too. Find the treasure, collect keys, don't die and exit. So like in those best classic older 8-bit style games. This game is pure puzzle addiction. The levels start easy, but quickly become brain-meltingly clever. It's the kind of a game you play for 5 minutes and suddenly it's 3 AM and you've not eaten since breakfast and are stuck on the very same level. So why play it, you may wonder? Because that aha moment when you solve a particularly challenging room is unmatched. It's actually a sequel to an older game called Chaganitsu, and Apogee released it right when platformers like Commander Keen were taking over the world, which is why this slower-paced gem got left behind. If you like your puzzles with a side of swords and sorcery, check out Spirit of Adventure. You know what? If you don't, check it out anyway, cause it's a fun game. It's an RPG that tries to bridge a gap between hardcore dungeon crawlers and accessible adventure games. You create a party of adventurers and explore a world filled with strange drugs and political intrigue. You view the world in first person, battling monsters, talking to locals and having the fantasy time of your life. The interface is super clean, clearly designed to be easy to grasp and inviting, at least when compared to other complex RPGs of the time. Simply put, Spirit of Adventure is truly charming. It is much more forgiving than its peers, making it a perfect cozy RPG for a rainy weekend, for when you're ill, or for lazy holidays. The writing is surprisingly funny and the world feels lived in. Interestingly enough, you can actually split your party, which was a rare mechanic back then, and you can have them in 2 different places at the same time. Quite unfortunately, Spirit of Adventure launched in the shadow of the mighty Eye of the Beholder and the upcoming Ultima 7, meaning that this friendly little adventure didn't get the love it deserved. Now, we're getting into something much more real and also one of my faves from 1991, Jones in the Fast Lane. Sierra Online made this absolute masterpiece and it's a digital, multiplayer board game that simulates life, as in yours or mine, or anyone else's for that matter too. If you're alone, you play against the computer-controlled characters literally named Jones, and your goal is to get a job, get an education, pay rent, buy nice clothes and try not to starve. Well, there are real objectives in the game, but listing them wouldn't be as exciting as not to starve. Anyway, you take turns moving around the board, visiting numerous locations and performing actions assigned to them to progress in your quote-unquote life. It may sound mundane, but it's hella fun and fiercely competitive.
Remember, no food is better than our food.
Jones in the Fast Lane is arguably the most addictive game on today's list. Heck, I'd risk saying that it's multiplayer gold. Trying to sabotage your friend by buying the last concert tickets or watching them fail to pay the rent is darkly satisfying. In-game, let's make that clear, I mean in-game. On the other hand, friends, who am I kidding, right? Anyway, why would you want to play it today? Because it's hilarious satire of late 80s and early 90s work and status culture. And because it uses digitized actors for the characters, giving it a unique, uncanny valley look that screams 1991. It got buried because it was hard to market. I mean, is it a board game, a sim, a party title? Who knows, but it's still better than Monopoly.
If you're not completely satisfied, we'll be glad to...
Enough paying rent bull, let's blow stuff up, semi-tactically, Special Forces. It's a sequel to Airborne Ranger and it's a real-time action/tactical shooter. You command a squad of 4 elite soldiers picked from 8 recruits, each with their own unique skills behind enemy lines, and you control them individually or issue orders. The missions range from rescuing hostages through airstrikes and assassinations to destroying radar dishes. It plays from a top-down perspective, and unlike the run-and-gun shooters of the day, one bullet here actually hurts and can put your entire mission at risk. In a way, and sorta indirectly, Special Forces could be considered an ancestor of cannon fodder and commandos, because not only you need to coordinate your team's fire and targets, but also often move stealthily and plan your exit. It's worth playing because it respects your intelligence. You can't just rumble your way through, you have to put thought behind each of your strategies. Special Forces' cells were heavily wounded by the RTS boom and especially the Dune 2, which landed the same year, and then killed by FPS explosion and likes of Wolfenstein 3D and Doom. Given the time frame of its release, it never really stood a chance. The game, as they say, was rigged from the start. And finally, we descend into the labyrinth with The Summoning. It was developed by the same team as Darkspire, and just like its predecessor, it's an isometric action RPG set in a huge labyrinth built out of around 40 different levels and countless bloodthirsty monsters. You are summoned to a massive training dungeon to prove your worth and grow strong enough to eventually fight and defeat Shadow Weaver, the villain responsible for the evil spreading across the land. The dungeon you'll be cutting through is interconnected and filled with puzzles to solve, NPCs to interact with, and monsters to slay. And it's the magic system that is the true star of The Summoning. You have to use hand gestures to cast spells, which requires memorizing various combinations. And while you may be like, hey, if I'd like to remember more things, I'd be well, I don't know who, but I wouldn't be playing games. I want to have fun, and that's all. Worry not, it's definitely worth to do so as the game is rather rewarding. The combat is real-time and visceral, and overall, The Summoning is a huge, meaty game that you can sink dozens of hours into. And if you wonder why it's worth playing today, because of everything I just said. Also, the level design is quite brilliant, offering multiple ways to solve all the problems you may encounter. The Summoning didn't stand a chance commercially. Ultima Underworld stole the spotlight with its fancy 3D graphics and immersive modern gameplay, leaving this isometric beauty in the proverbial dark. Let's start by traveling back to the mid-90s with Street Racer. Now, if you didn't own a Nintendo, this was your Mario Kart, and honestly, it might have been even crazier. It's a high-speed kart racer where you choose from a roster of bizarre creatures, like Frank Frankenstein or Raphael the Playboy, and race across unique thematic tracks. The plot, such as it is simply to prove you're the fastest weirdo on the circuit by winning the championship cup against the cartoon lunatics. Street Racer is still a blast today because of the sheer chaos. It feels faster than its competitors, the weapons are punchier, and on PC it used glorious SVGA graphics that made the Mode 7 of SNES-style track spinning look impossibly smooth. It's pure unfiltered arcade adrenaline that doesn't take itself seriously for a second. And while it may not have had the staying power of Mario Kart, it definitely was one of the best alternatives on PC in and around 1997. Next up in 1997, we have perhaps one of the most ambitious games ever attempted. Well, at least in the 1990s. Its birthright, the Gorgon's Alliance. And with a title like that, it's gotta be great. Based on a niche Dungeons & Dragons setting, this game is insane. You play as a regent in the land of Cyrilla wielding divine bloodline powers. The story is epic too. An evil warlord called the Gorgon is trying to steal everyone's divine blood to become supreme. His influence spreads across the continent, twisting politics and threatening every realm that dares to oppose him. So you have to manage your kingdom, raise armies and eventually fight the Gorgon to stop his nefarious plot. But there is hook to Gorgon's Alliance, and it's not its grandiose title. It's a grand strategy game and a first-person dungeon crawler all at once. You move armies on a map, handle diplomacy and then zoom all the way down into 3D dungeons to fight monsters and grab epic loot personally. It is incredibly clunky by modern standards, but the sheer scope of managing a magical bloodline while running a kingdom is a strategic depth rarely seen since.
Wait a minute.
Let's slow it down with a charming point-and-click adventure from 1996 called Alien Incident. And do you know what's an incident in all of that here? That it's the first time you hear about it. You play as Benjamin Richards, a teenager visiting his scientist uncle on Halloween. Naturally, as it's easy to predict, your uncle's latest experiment goes wrong, a lightning strike supercharges his wormhole spawner, opening portal big enough for an alien mothership to appear. The aliens walk through it and kidnap him. The entire plot involves exploring a spooky mansion and eventually an alien ship to rescue your uncle and stop the aliens before they do, well, whatever it is they're trying to do. Because as it turns out, they're rather incompetent and not very bright, even though they think that they're on an important mission to find a mysterious life form called the Entity. I'd recommend playing Alien Incident because it's just lovely. It has gorgeous pixel art and a very Day of the Tentacle-esque vibe, but it's considerably more forgiving. The puzzles actually make sense, which was a rarity in the 90s, and it's funny, lighthearted and a perfect example of the best mid-90s European adventure gaming had to offer. (1996) also gave us Tunnel B1, a super fast first-person hover tank shooter that drops you right into the maze of hostile tunnels with one clear objective: destroy the enemy's ultimate weapon. There's no elaborate backstory, no named villain, just you strapped into a cutting-edge attack craft and told to blast your way through anything that moves. It's pure 90s tunnel shooter energy. Speed, explosions and the unspoken assumption that of course you'll save the day, because that's just how you roll. Tunnel B1 seems to be all about sensory overload. The sense of speed is rather impressive, making you feel like you're flying a wipeout ship fitted with cannons inside a tight and convoluted sewer system. The dynamic colored lighting was way ahead of its time, and paired with a pounding soundtrack by Chris Helsbeck, created an intense claustrophobic atmosphere and an action-packed thrill ride. In 1997, while everyone was playing XCOM Apocalypse, I know I have, they missed its terrifying cousin, Incubation. Time is running out. This is a turn-based tactical squad game set in the distant future. The plot is simple and horrifying. The human colony, Planet Scaria, is being wiped out by a virus that mutates its human population into a nightmarish killing machines called Skygear. You lead a squad of space marines trained to hold the line and evacuate civilians before the planet is lost. Incubation is still fantastic because it's one of the first fully 3D tactical games, and it uses that perspective to ratchet up the tension. Ammo is scarce, guns overheat, and the aliens are terrifying melee monsters. Every turn feels like a desperate puzzle where one wrong move gets your whole squad eaten. It is brutal, but also when you manage to pull off some of the more daring strategic moves, oh, so satisfying. You know, sometimes you're just in the mood for some mindless violence. I mean, digital mindless violence I am most definitely not recommending any other kind than in the game. And in 1997 we got a freeware gem called Sea Dogs. It's a top-down run-and-gun action shooter. There is almost zero plot here. You are a mercenary choosing missions from a list. And there is simple go there, kill these guys, rescue this hostage, blow up that computer console kind of a thing. And then it's rinse and repeat across campaign-based missions rather than randomly generated levels. But the true magic of Sea Dogs was the couch co-op. The original DOS version supported up to 2 players, but the modern open source release, Sea Dogs SDL, bumps that up to 4-player local multiplayer, which is absolute chaos, in a good way. It's fast, it's bloody, the weapons feel great, and because it's open source now, it's still being updated and it's totally free, so if you feel like giving it a spin with a friend, now's as good time as it's ever been. It's the ultimate turn off your brain and shoot stuff party game, and it's worth every penny. You know, cause it's free. Let's take to the skies with Starfighter 3000. This was an arcade flight combat simulation that ditched any pretense of realism for pure action-packed spectacle. The plot is glorious sci-fi cheese. FedNet is trying to restore order across distant worlds after decades of chaos, and you are the hotshot novice pilot flying the Predator Mark IV who has to blast your way through evolving mission maps to become the Star Commander and save the galaxy. What made Starfighter 3000 special wasn't the flight physics, the presentation, or even the sound design. It was the scale. For 1996, these maps were enormous. You were flying over sprawling, low-poly cities and massive terrain with huge draw distances. And since the PC remake added full texture map surfaces and fogging to push those visuals even further, you could see so far ahead, it felt as if you could look right into the future. It just felt epic to swoop down and level the entire enemy bases with huge, fiery explosions and then turn back on your merry way home. Starfighter 3000 felt like a power trip, pure and simple. If you prefer your games grittier, darker and a bit more violent than your standard shooter, check out Take No Prisoners. And yeah, the title pretty much says it all. The game definitely delivers on that promise, so if that's your thing, you're gonna have a banging time. It's a top-down action shooter built on Raven Software's Vampire engine. It's set in a post-apocalyptic San Antonio, Texas, which is now irradiated and overrun by mutants and gangs. You play as Slade, a cynical mercenary hired by Martech Industries to steal a powerful crystal hidden inside the dome, the structure that shields the last survivors from radiation. Take No Prisoners is peak edgy 90s. It's incredibly violent, your character is constantly snarky and it plays like a hyper-aggressive version of Gauntlet. The sheer volume of enemies it throws at you is truly impressive, but you aren't tactically taking cover, you are circle strafing shots, jumping in where the enemy numbers are most dense and mowing down hundreds of bad guys with heavy weaponry as if it was absolutely nothing. This game is a glorious stress relief and a fantastic time to be had if you just want to let go and forget about your daily troubles. And like a good old lactose intolerance-induced diarrhea, we're back to racing, but this time with much higher stakes. 1997's POD, aka Planet of Death, which is actually a much more catchy name. Anyway, a parasitic, corrosive fungus called POD is literally eating the planet lava alive, and the only way of this dying rock is to win an illegal racing tournament where the ultimate prize is the very last seat on the evacuation ship. You are basically racing for your life against other desperate drivers. POD is remembered fondly, because it was one of the first PC games to support 3D acceleration straight out of the box and the first to advertise MMX support. So naturally, it was plastered all over the gaming mags in all the reviews of the new accelerators. And you know what? I don't mind, because it was pretty darn fun. The tracks are incredible. They feel organic, decaying and alien. The cars are heavy and fast, and the atmosphere of a dying world makes every race feel desperate. It remains one of the most unique looking racers ever made. And if not for anything else, this is as good reason as any to try it out. Ah, Lords of Magic. I remember seeing it first and being blown away. I didn't instantly get how to play it, but I really wanted to, so I persevered. And it was worth it. This game is often compared to Heroes of Might and Magic, but in reality it's a very different beast. The world of Uruk is divided by 8 opposing faiths: life, death, order, chaos, and so on. You know, typical fantasy stuff. The evil Lord Balkov of the Death faction is conquering everyone. You pick a faith, build armies, hire champions and reclaim the Great Temple, so you can actually start building your kingdom and then try to defeat Balkov to restore balance. The twist is that while the map movement is turn-based, the combat is real-time and chaotic. The magic system is also super deep and satisfying, and each faith has its own spell school. Capturing enemy temples lets you access their magic and then combine different schools for crazy effects. Lords of Magic has a steep learning curve, but once it clicks, it's unbelievably fun and addictive. You should definitely check it out. Okay, 1996 is far from done, and it gave us one of the weirdest premises ever in Gender Wars. It's a squad-based real-time tactics game, kinda like cannon fodder on steroids in sci-fi setting. The plot is set in the far future, when humanity has split into 2 hostile factions, men and women. Both sides use genetic engineering to mass-produce their followers. They live in separate underground cities and fight a constant ridiculous war against each other. You pick a side and lead a 4-person squad to raid the enemy base, steal shampoo or blow up their leaders. Gender Wars is peak 90s politically incorrect cheese, and it plays it entirely for laughs. But underneath that bizarre premise is actually a solid tactical game very similar to Syndicate or Cannon Fodder. Controlling a squad, managing inventory and causing isometric havoc in the enemy base is genuinely fun tactical gameplay. Sure, the pathfinding of units is wonky from time to time, but it's a very little complaint for an otherwise rather fantastic playing game. And finally, we end in 1996 again with Seek and Destroy. Originally an Amiga title, this game is a fantastic port to DOS. A rather late one, which might have contributed to its obscurity, but a fun one nonetheless. Imagine the classic game Desert Strike, but replace the precision with heavy metal and pure carnage. Set during fictional Cold War, gone hot in Africa, you command tanks and helicopters to stop a rogue general and his private army from causing massive destruction. So yeah, you're a good guy, proving your goodness by spreading death all around. The plot of Seek and Destroy is rather thin, but truth be told, it shouldn't really bother you, because it's the gameplay that's the star here, and it's thick with explosive action. The game is all about destructible environments. Trees burn down, buildings crumble, and enemy vehicles pop satisfyingly, making it an unforgettable experience. It's just pure, unadulterated vehicular manslaughter that feels fantastic to control. Let's kick things off with a hidden gem from Germany called Caribbean Disaster. It's a political strategy tactics game in which you take a role of a president on a tiny island. The plot kicks off when you juggle bribes from American and Russian embassies while trying to keep your ministers in line. But this isn't just a political survival story, it's a bureaucratic nightmare. To stay in power, you don't just need to upgrade your presidential palace, you also need to appease the military ministers. The story is a pure comedy of errors. You have to outmaneuver your ministers, sway the population and use eccentric contacts like a secret police chief, a radio DJ and even priests who sells weapons. The writing is heavily inspired by slapstick comedy, think Monkey Island meets Saturday morning cartoon, but with a distinctly German, satirical business sim sense of humor. If you love quirky political simulations and strategies but are tired of the serious ones, this is your jam. Caribbean Disaster is a wonderfully silly time capsule. The mechanics are creative without being impossible, usually involving absurd combinations of propaganda, bribery and military toys like tanks, zeppelins and submarines. It's also a fascinating piece of history because it was the third game in Icarian's satirical Mad TV, Mad News, this series of humor management sims. This, however, is its own bizarre island presidency experience. Next up, let's shift gears into Overdrive. And yes, it's a terrible pun on a game's title. In 1995, racing games were starting to transition from 2D sprites to 3D polygons, and Overdrive joyfully ignored the bleeding edge and stuck to the tried and tested top-down 2D. There isn't a deep Shakespearean plot here, it's just pure arcade adrenaline. You are a driver in a league-based championship climbing ranks against 8 aggressive opponents, with a final showdown against the so-called demon driver where fair play is strictly optional. The game is a little like a hybrid between Micro Machines and Supercars 2. You're racing across diverse tracks, 20 courses spread across 5 terrains from off-road dirt to GP-style circuits in a polished, low-res top-down presentation. You have to beat the other drivers to the finish line and also manage time-lapse and brutal AI rivals rather than gimmicky hazards like oil slicks. The physics are as you expect them to be in a game like that, so totally arcade. But it makes for a lot of fun, and especially if you get to race against a friend. Overdrive is still worth playing simply because of how fun it is. While the graphics are simple sprites and there are no bells and whistles of any kind, it runs incredibly smooth and fast even by modern standards. It captures that one more race feeling perfectly when you're playing alone and tons more races if you're with a friend. If you like Monkey Island or Broken Sword, stop what you're doing now and look at Touche: The Adventures of Fifth Musketeer. You play as Geoffrey Lebrun, a young naive man arriving in the 16th century Rouen with dreams of becoming a musketeer. But since the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan are already famous, you are aiming for the leftovers. So you're gunning for the C-team among the medieval Avengers.
The colors of the Musketeers.
The plot is surprisingly dense and well written. Jeffrey stumbles onto a conspiracy involving a murdered nobleman and a mysterious will that could change the fate of France. You have to travel across the country from crowded taverns to majestic cathedrals, solving puzzles and gathering clues. The script is full of wit, sarcasm and playful banter, mostly provided by your cynical sidekick Henry, who never fails to constantly point out how incompetent you are. Tusha holds up incredibly well because of its production values. The voice acting is genuinely professional, a rarity for 1995, and the hand-painted backgrounds are truly gorgeous. It feels like playing a high-budget animated movie from the era. Even today, the mix of humor, atmosphere and inventive puzzles makes it feel like a hidden gem that could easily sit alongside the classics. If you grew up blasting through R-Type or Gradius, then Prototype is like stumbling across a forgotten and long-lost treasure. It's a horizontally scrolling shooter that drops you straight into a dystopian future where humanity's last hope is the titular Prototype. To put things plain and simple, you're piloting the ship that somehow wasn't destroyed in the first 5 minutes of the invasion. Good luck! Prototype hurls you across 5 sprawling levels of side-scrolling chaos, from mountain ranges to alien planets. Your ship carries 4 weapon systems at once, each upgradable with energy pills dropped by the enemies, so it's less about memorizing patterns and more about juggling firepower tactically. Boss fights naturally show up too, and they are usually big and angry spaceship with more guns than personality, but the sheer volume of foes and projectiles going away keeps your reflexes sharp. What makes Prototype stand out among its peers is its polish. Multi-level parallax scrolling creates a surprising illusion of depth, and for 1995 DOS hardware, that was a serious flex. The soundtrack leans into the arcade vibe, giving you that console feel on PC. It's not the most famous shooter of its era, but it's got that scrappy charm, a hidden gem that feels like it should have been blasting away in some arcade right next to Raiden and Thunder Force, covered with a stench of sweat and cigarette smoke. It's worth firing up even today just to see how much neon destruction your poor keyboard can handle. Chrono Master is a sci-fi graphic adventure with a pedigree that is honestly shocking. You play as Rin Korda, a Chrono Master, a retired designer who specializes in creation of the so-called pocket universes. And the galaxy is in crisis as 5 of these pocket universes have been placed into artificial stasis by a mysterious force, essentially freezing them in time. Your job is to enter these frozen worlds, locate the world keys and restart their time flow so that they can carry on as intended. The plot is incredibly high concept, dealing with frozen time mechanics, interstellar politics and moral dilemmas. Each world that you visit has a unique culture and its own laws of physics that you have to decipher first to be able to solve their puzzles. The writing of Chrono Master is leagues above most games of the era, and there's a reason for that too. The game was co-designed and written by Roger Zelazny, one of the greatest sci-fi authors of the 20th century, famous for his iconic The Chronicles of Amber. And while the voice cast isn't star-studded, the performances still lend a surreal mid-90s grid that perfectly matches the game's strange universes.
This place is so dark I can hardly see.
Bermuda Syndrome is a cinematic platformer in the vein of Prince of Persia or Flashback. You play as Jack Thompson, a B-17 bomber pilot during World War II. While on a mission, your plane is shot down by German fighters, but instead of crashing into the ocean, a mysterious portal sucks you into an alternate reality. You wake up in a hidden prehistoric world where dinosaurs still roam, but, and here's the twist, it's also inhabited by a lost civilization of humans. Jack begins by saving an unnamed princess from a sacrificial ritual, and from then onward, the two of them have to work together to survive. The story is a classic pulp adventure romance. You have to fight off giant dinosaurs, solve environmental puzzles, and navigate the hazards of this strange world to find a way home. The main selling point of Bermuda Syndrome is its visual style. The character animation is hand-drawn and incredibly fluid and realistic feeling. What makes the game unique for the time is the companion mechanic. The princess isn't just a damsel in distress, she's a partner. She follows you, helps with puzzles, and the game spends a lot of time building the relationship between her and Jack, which was pretty advanced storytelling for an action platformer in 1995. Welcome to the cyberpunk future. Burns Cycle puts you in the boots of Soul Cutter, a data thief in a neon-drenched metropolis. A major data theft goes wrong and Cutter is infected with a deadly neural virus called Burns Cycle. What's more, it will turn his brain into a goo in no more than 2 hours. If that sounds suspiciously to you like Johnny Mnemonic, you're not alone in that. Here's the kicker. Since the virus is programmed to kill you in exactly 2 hours, the game plays out in real time and you have a literal clock ticking down as you fight for Cutter's life. You have to navigate the city, interact with shady characters via full-motion video cutscenes, avoid people whom Cutter stole the data from, and dive into Televerse, a psychedelic, virtual reality representation of the internet, to find the cure. Burn Cycle is the epitome of 90s cool. It embraces the techno-industrial aesthetic perfectly. The gameplay is mainly a mix of adventure exploration and puzzle solving with occasional arcade-style mini-games. And while some could complain about the time limit being restrictive, I believe it's a mechanic that makes you feel like you've really only 2 hours to live and have to find a way to save yourself before the timer runs out. Interestingly enough, the soundtrack was so good it was released as a standalone industrial techno album. Also, the game was originally a flagship title for the Philips CDI console, but the PC version is superior because it actually runs at the playable frame rate.
Look about him.
Okay, things are about to get weird. Woodruff and the Schnibble of Asimov is a point-and-click adventure from Pierre Gillots, whose name I've no doubt butchered, the creator of the Goblin series. The backstory is a lot. After a nuclear war, humanity retreats underground, leaving the surface to a race of mutants called Buzook. Humans eventually return and oppress the Buzooks. You know, like humans tend to do to weaker species. We are really the dicks of the universe, now that I think about it. No wonder no other space races care about meeting us. You play as Woodruff, a human raised by Professor Asimov, a wise Buzook inventor. When your adopt father is kidnapped by the human government, you decide to go on a quest to save him. The catch? Woodruff was a toddler when the kidnapping happened, but thanks to rapid aging machine, he's now physically an adult, but still has the mind of a child and he can't read. Your quest is to find the mystical Schnibble, a vague entity that nobody can really define, and all of that to bring peace back to the city. And save your father. It's obviously about saving your father too. The art style of Woodruff is mind-blowing. It looks like a Dr. Seuss book having a fever dream mixed with Goblin's aesthetics. The screen is constantly filled with tiny, animated details and it's just a blast watching it all in motion. I mean, playing the game too, but it looks really, really cool and I thought it was worth a mention. The puzzles are mostly inventory-based, but there's also a syllable learning system tied to Buzook magic. Woodruff is bizarre, challenging and unlike anything else you'll play. It's a satire of bureaucracy and racism wrapped in a candy-colored shell. Thorin's Passage is a beautiful, family-friendly adventure designed by Al Lowe. You may know him better as the brain behind the iconic Larry Laffer games. You play as Thorin, a farm boy on the planet Strata. Strata is unique because it's built like a set of Russian nesting dolls. It consists of 5 nested worlds collectively called the Lands Below. When an evil sorceress turns Thorin's parents and a cat into crystal statues, he has to journey downward to travel from world to world. Each of these layers has a totally different ecosystem and culture. Thorin is joined by Bogle, a shape-shifting purple creature that acts as your multi-tool for solving puzzles. And this mechanic was quirky and inventive for the time. Though it has to be noted that Sierra Sada Adventures sometimes experimented with similar companion-based puzzles. Thorin's Passage is basically a playable Disney movie. I mean, it has obviously nothing to do with Disney, but the quality of characters and their animations could definitely rival the best of theirs. And since we're on the subject, the animation is of the traditional hand-drawn kind and it's gorgeous. You just have to play it to see it in the full glory all throughout the adventure. After releasing a whole series of rather lewd games, Allo wanted to make something he could play with his daughter, inspired by noticing how Miss Doubtfire entertained both kids and adults. So he poured all his puzzle design skills and imagination into a clean, heartwarming tale. It proves he was a master designer and not just a dick and balls joke merchant.
What are you looking at? Yeah!
In 1995, PC owners looked with jealousy at all those console gamers playing with their amazing Virtua Fighters, Tekkens and the likes. So Argonaut Software decided that they would answer that silent yearning, and FX Fighter was their answer. It's a fully 3D fighting game revolving around an intergalactic tournament. 8 of the universe's strongest warriors, including a giant bug, a cyborg and an Amazonian warrior, are fighting for the prize of the title of the Universal Champion. But the tournament is not as cool as it sounds, because each character is made to fight in it, to save their specific home planet from destruction. You battle across distinct alien arenas, like a volcanic magma world or a serene water planet, and for the time and tech at hand it all actually looks rather decent. The gameplay mimics the big console hitters. Combos, ring-outs and special moves are the name of the game. And as much as it was a really decent and to most gamers fun-playing title, I somehow never managed to learn to like it. It tires me, it feels clunky to me, and I'm not having fun. That said, it's a me problem, and you shouldn't really let that sway your opinion without trying it out first. For its time, many consider FX Fighter to be a technical marvel. In 1995, 3D fighting games on PC were considered impossible. FX Fighter used advanced rendering to make it run on standard hardware powered by Argonaut's B-Render engine. Fun fact, the developers used 3D Studio industrial design software to model the characters, which gave them that very distinct shiny look compared to the flat polygons of its rivals. It's a fascinating look at the early, awkward steps of the 3D fighting genre on computers, and one definitely worth checking out. Well, unless you're me, then you can safely ignore it. But if you're me, then I'm you, and I would like this video, subscribe and hit the hype. Comic Zone is arguably one of the most stylish games ever made, definitely the top 3 in the 1990s. You play a sketch turner, a streetwise rock musician and comic book artist living in New York. One night during a thunderstorm, a powerful mutant named Mortus, the villain of his comic, manages to escape into the real world and swaps places with Sketch, which is all kinds of upsetting and even more troublesome. So Sketch is thrown into the pages of his own comic book, or sucked into them, potato tomato. The gameplay is a beat 'em up, but the level is the comic book layout. And when you traverse, you physically jump across the wide gutters between panels. Mortus, holding the pen in the real world, is constantly drawing new enemies and hazards right in front of you to try and kill you. You have to fight for a post-apocalyptic comic world to find a way out. Does that sound cool to you? Good, 'cause it is. The presentation of Comic Zone is flawless. When you hit an enemy, a pause speech bubble appears. You can even tear off a piece of the paper background to make an airplane and throw it at the enemies. It is frantic, devilishly difficult and visually timeless. Not many people know this or remember, but Comic Zone actually has multiple endings depending on whether you manage to save your ally, General Alyssa Cyan, from drowning in a final frantic sequence. It's a short game, but it's an intense ride from start to finish and you're definitely going to remember it for a while. Let's end on a high note, quite literally. Terminal Velocity is a 3D arcade flight shooter. The story behind it is a classic sci-fi cheese. The alliance of spacefaring races is being attacked by the rogue perimeter defense computers and their fleets. You are a pilot of the TV-202, a fighter jet that is basically a flying tank that's armed to the teeth. You fly across a variety of planets. You know, a typical sci-fi stuff, so ice worlds, lava planets and tech-heavy moon bases among others. And the gameplay isn't a complex simulation, it's all about arcade action and speed. The unique hook was that you could fly seamlessly into underground tunnels to blow up reactor cores, giving off major Death Star trench run vibes, and then boost out before the whole thing explodes. Fun stuff. Terminal velocity was the tech demo everyone used to show off their new Pentium processors. It runs smooth as butter and the sense of scale was massive for 1995. It's just pure, unadulterated destruction and believe you me, you're gonna love it. Fun fact, Terminal Velocity was one of the first PC games to feature fully texture-mapped 3D environments without relying on DOS extenders, making it a showcase of mid-90s coding wizardry. Let's start this video up at the end of the decade with King of Dragon Pass. Don't worry though, we're jumping into older titles right after that. King of Dragon Pass is a fascinating mix of strategy, RPG and choose-your-own adventure novel. You aren't just one hero, you're in charge of an entire clan settling in dangerous new land called the Dragon Pass. Your goal is to manage your tribe's food, settle disputes, fight rivals and eventually unite all the clans to become the king. It's basically a fantasy politics simulator where high drama happens via text boxes all the freaking time. Mechanically, King of Dragon Pass is unlike most games of its time, as it's not about twitch reflexes at all, it's about making hard choices. Do you raid your neighbors for cows and risk war, or try to trade? Do you listen to your warlord or your priestess? It's worth playing today because, honestly, very few games have ever matched its depth of interactive storytelling. All of your choices have massive long-term consequences that shape your tribe and the narrative. A fun fact, the game is set in Glorgantha, which is one of the oldest and deepest world-building settings originally created for tabletop RPGs in the 1970s, specifically for the tabletop game RuneQuest, not D&D. Next up, we have a first-person shooter that got absolutely steamrolled by history, Blakestone Aliens of Gold. You play as British intelligence agent Blakestone, think James Bond but in space, fighting the evil Dr. Goldfire who is trying to enslave humanity with genetically engineered mutants and alien hybrids. You run through sci-fi corridors, blasting everything that moves with a whole plethora of energy-based weapons. It's a classic cheesy B-movie sci-fi action. So why play Blakestone when Doom exists? Well, it came out less than a week before Doom and was built on the older Wolfenstein 3D engine, so theoretically, there's no reason to. But it actually added colored floors and ceilings and interactive environment bits, like working vending machines and in-wall dispensers for health, and even friendly NPCs who gave you info, if you didn't accidentally shoot them first. It's a colorful, funky and fun-sounding blast from the past that bridges the gap between the two bigger classics perfectly. Let's head over to France for a weird one, Le Fétiche Maya, sometimes known just as Maya. And despite what it may sound like in English, there's absolutely nothing lewd about it. This comes from French developer Silmarils, who made some very ambitious, very difficult games. You play an adventurer looking for a sacred Mayan statuette in the Yucatan jungle. It's an action-adventure game with a bit of an Indiana Jones vibe, mixing exploration, puzzle solving and some fairly clunky combat, plus a surprising jeep driving section that switches to a first-person view. Le Fétiche Maya mixes side-view exploration with driving sections effortlessly, and for when it came out, it feels unusually open and ambitious. It can be a bit junky to control today, and it is absolutely unforgiving in that classic French adventure game style. But it's worth a look for its atmosphere. It really nails the feeling of being lost in a hostile, dense jungle all on your own. It's a great example of European developers in the late 80s trying to push the boundaries of what adventure games could be outside of the typical parser or point-and-click format. Did it work though? Well, it didn't crack for Sierra or LucasArts as well, but it's still a fun title to sink some hours into even today. Spaceship Warlock is a genuine relic from the dawn of the CD-ROM era. It's a sci-fi, first-person point-and-click adventure. You start on a planet Stumble, a bleak world under crowd control, from which you manage to escape aboard the spaceship called Belshazzar, and then get captured by the ship Warlock. From there, you're dragged into a quest to find Terra, the Earth the Crow literally stole from its original orbit, and hit deep in their territory. It's a glorious, cheesy space opera, and a title no one ever expected to be fun, and yet it not only is, but also offers a surprisingly grandiose plot about saving humanity from the evil empire that conquered it.
All hail. Pay your tax.
While Spaceship Warlock may have not been a massive hit, it was a game that showed a few that played it what a CD-ROM could actually do. Even if its gameplay is simple and not offering particularly demanding puzzles, the presentation for its original 1991 Macintosh release was mind-blowing, featuring music, voices and lots of animations. The Windows version didn't arrive until 1994, but the experience remained the same, even if it wasn't as impressive 3 years later. Playing it today is like stepping into a time capsule of early 90s multimedia ambition. It's goofy, charming and unique. Let's take a deep breath and dive underwater with Microprocess C Rogue. Also, let's try to sound less cheesy. How about that? Okay? Okay. You know I'm gonna break that promise in a couple of minutes, right? Anyway, this game isn't about saving the world. It's about capitalism, baby. You're the captain of a modern treasure hunting vessel. Your job is to research historical shipwrecks, hire a specialized crew, manage your budget, sail the Caribbean, African and European waters, and send divers down to haul up gold and artifacts, all the while dealing with rival treasure hunters and storms. And yes, even the real-world wrecks like the Titanic show up in the game. For all intents and purposes, C Rogue is not an action game but a simulation that requires some patience and a lot of planning. You have to manage your crew's fatigue, buy the right sonar equipment and actually learn how to identify targets. The diving parts are side-scrolling segments where you navigate the wrecks and avoid sharks. It's a complex game that got buried by flasher titles, but it's still worth playing today because its theme is unique and literally unlike anything else then or now. If you grew up with an Amiga computer in Europe, you probably know this one. It was for some reason quite big here. Why do I sound like I care very little for it? Because I do, but it doesn't take away from its quality, it's a personal take. For everyone outside of Europe though, meet Ultimate Body Blows. This was Team 17's big answer to the Street Fighter II craze. It's a 2D fighting game featuring a roster of slightly questionable intergalactic stereotypes, engaging in a gigantic tournament to see who can punch the hardest. Well, the reason for it might have been something else, but honestly, is it really important in a versus fighter? You're gonna end up playing it with a friend anyway. The Amiga struggled to run perfect ports of arcade fighters, so Team 17 made their own. An entire series, actually. And Ultimate Body Blows is a compilation of the earlier games, combining all the characters into one massive roster. It features huge, gorgeous, colorful pixel art sprites and crunchy sound effects. The controls can feel a bit stiff today because they were designed for one-button joysticks, but it's a fantastic slice of European arcade nostalgia if you don't seek depth in your fighting games. We're heading back to French developer Silmarils for another tough-as-nails title, Colorado. This is an action-adventure game set during the American Gold Rush. You play an explorer trying to navigate the wilderness, deal with hostile locals, manage your resources, and basically just survive the harsh environment while looking for the legendary Cheyenne gold mine. Along the way you'll be pulled into a series of scripted encounters that push you deeper into the frontier mythos Silmarils love to build. Same like Silmarils says earlier, La Fetish Maya, this game doesn't hold your hand. It mixes exploration with survival elements and does so with style. It's famous, or infamous depending how you want to look at it, for its incredibly detailed and difficult canoeing simulation segment. It's a very atmospheric game that captures the feeling of being alone and vulnerable in the wild and having only yourself to count on. If you want a retro challenge that will genuinely test your patience, skills and survival instincts, make sure to give Colorado a shot. Okay, things are about to get weird. Welcome to Blood Machine Head. You play as Dr. Kimberly Stride, a scientist who accidentally unleashes an unstoppable rogue strain of bad DNA that starts consuming the world bit by bit. To try to stop the spread of mutation, her consciousness is uploaded into a high-tech craft called, you guessed it, the Machine Head. And she must pew her way through a world worth of bodies to save the day. Blood Machine Head is a mix of first-person shooter and vehicular combat in tight corridors and 3D arenas. It's chaotic and fast and the gameplay is pure mid-90s, early 3D fever dream. It's still worth playing for the pumping, techno-trance soundtrack, explosive twin-cannon action and the surreal psychedelic visuals that feel like a time capsule of 1996 edge. It's also a fantastic title to just let go and shoot stuff if you've had a bad day. Let's revisit one of our Taiwanese favorites, Panda Entertainment. While you may know them from the Sango Fighter games, this is ZUG, based on the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West. And yes, I'm 100% convinced I've mispronounced the title. I'm smart like that. Anyway, you play as the legendary Monkey King or his companions battling through hordes of demons on a pilgrimage to the west. Story-wise, you're escorting a monk Zhuangzang to retrieve the sacred scriptures, smacking every demon, monster and troublemaker who dares interrupt the trip. So you know, having a lot of side-scrolling beat-em-up fun and traveling the world via means of kicks to the balls and punches to the chin interchangeably. While ZUG wasn't made by Capcom, it plays a lot like their classic brawlers to the point you'd swear it was a lost sequel to their game you just never had a chance to experience. The pixel art is absolutely stunning, vibrant and fluid, and the gameplay is pure roundhouse kick to the nose bliss. It's a masterclass into the action that many Western players missed out on entirely. If you love beat-em-ups, this is a top-tier hidden gem and you should definitely look it up. And finally, let's wrap this segment with something a little different, Starblade. It's a stylish sci-fi action puzzler that feels like someone mashed two handfuls of different games together into one surreal DOS experience. What's the plot, you may wonder? Well, you're humanity's last operative boarding the star cruiser Starblade to hunt down Genolin, a mutated brood mother created by the evil insectoid Hydras before she can spawn an army of super warriors. Naturally, the place is crawling with biomechanical weirdness, traps and labyrinthine corridors. It's peak early 90s Euro sci-fi, mysterious, moody and just a little bit strange in the best way. You explore rooms, dodge hazards, solve light puzzles, and the visuals are classic Silmarils. Bold colors, detailed sprites and that unmistakable French fantasy sci-fi vibe that makes everything feel slightly otherworldly. It's a short, atmospheric adventure that still stands out today because it commits fully to its strange hybrid design, part action, part exploration, part shooter, and never wastes your time with filler. Alien Odyssey is a cinematic action-adventure developed by Argonaut Software. Mechanically, it's a wild hybrid, switching between third-person exploration, FMV-driven rail shooting, and light 3D puzzle solving. You play as Saf Abal, a scientific survivor who crash lands on a hostile alien world and gets pulled into a conflict involving invading cyborg forces known as the DAC. The story follows Saf as he teams up with the native Yuma and works to sabotage DAC installations in hopes of surviving long enough to find a way home. Alien Odyssey is still worth playing today for the sheer ambition of its FMV transitions and B-render-powered pre-rendered environments, which were cutting edge for 1995. It's fun in that scrappy, mid-90s experimental way, but it's also a fascinating slice of tech history. Not many remember this, but it's the same Argonaut that co-created the Super FX chip for Star Fox on the SNES, talking about leaving a mark on history.
Some kind of computer.
Lost Eden is an adventure game by Cryo Interactive set in a world where humans and dinosaurs coexist. You play as Adam, Prince of Mo, who has to rebuild the ancient citadels to protect the world from the ravaging tyrants led by Murukus Rex. I know, sounds ridiculous, but the game's actually fun. It uses a point-and-click interface with beautiful pre-rendered environments, mixing static screens with short, first-person travel sequences, and the puzzles are your classic adventure game fare.
Show me where you want to go.
The atmosphere of Lost Eden is incredibly unique. It's kinda like a playable progressive rock album cover, loud, melodic and unpredictable. The soundtrack, composed by Stephanie Peake, was released as a standalone CD and has built up a bit of a legendary aura over the years, even if its supposed rarity that I've seen mentions of is mostly internet folklore. Just imagine, it's 2026 and we're already talking about internet folklore. What a time to be alive. Dark Earth is a post-apocalyptic action-adventure with a starlight setting. What do I mean by that? Well, a world plunged into a darkness where light is the source of life. You play as Archon, a guardian of the Starlight City of Sparta. After being poisoned by a dark substance, you have a limited time to find a cure while your body physically mutates. As the corruption spreads, Archon becomes increasingly feared and distrusted by the very people he's trying to save. It's a third-person fighter/explorer unlike anything at its time. Dark Earth is a proto-Souls-like game before that was even a term. So a dark, punishing and atmospheric game that's demanding, unforgiving, but not unfair. And while combat itself was often criticized for being clunky, it was definitely something to get used to and overcome rather than give up on. Dark Earth features a dynamic mutation system, where Archon's appearance and abilities change based on how much the poison has taken over. Captain Quasar is an isometric third-person action shooter originally released for the 3DO and then ported to PC a year later. You play as the titular captain, a futuristic space cap who's high on ego and low on brains. Basically me whenever someone questions the superiority of Star Trek over Star Wars. The plot is simple. Quasar blasts his way across the galaxy, cleaning up criminal hotspots for the intergalactic police force, usually by causing more collateral damage than the villains. Also like me, but after anything with lactose. Let's keep the details to the minimum. Mechanically, it's all about blowing up everything in sight, juggling ammo and using quirky gadgets across colorful isometric levels. So you know, fun. Captain Quasar is a comedy-first game with a loud, exaggerated cartoon style, very much in that Ren and Stimpy but legally distinct format. The PC version features higher resolution, cleaner visuals and smoother performance than its 3DO predecessor, making it a definitive way to play. It may be a relic of its era, but it's absolutely one worth rediscovering. Tubular Worlds is a side-scrolling shoot-em-up offering many different weapons, a variety of unique enemies and massive, screen-filling bosses. It's a pure arcade experience where you pilot a ship through a surreal environment. There isn't much of a complex narrative here, beyond a light-framing story about being a cadet flying through 4 virtual cyber worlds, so it's basically a high-octane mission to save the universe from an alien mechanical threat, supposedly. The visuals of Tubular Worlds were incredibly vibrant for 1994, with striking colors and smooth scrolling, something that was not necessarily given in the first half of 1990s. Interestingly enough, despite also releasing on Amiga and Macintosh, it still feels tuned like a classic arcade shooter with a difficulty curve that absolutely crushes anyone who isn't paying constant attention. Nightmare Creatures is a gothic-themed survival horror action game set in the 19th century London. You choose between Ignatius Blackwood, a staff-wielding priest, or Nadia, a fast-moving fighter with acrobatic attacks. And you kick the living, excuse me, sometimes dead too, shit out of all the creatures that dare to come your way. The plot revolves around Adam Crowley and the Brotherhood of Hecate unleashing a plague that mutates citizens into monsters, and you being the unlucky soul who has to clean up the mess. It's a fast-paced 3D brawler with a heavy emphasis on combos. Nightmare Creatures is incredibly satisfying to play because of the so-called adrenaline meter. If you don't kill enemies quickly, your health drains, so you're basically forced to spread death and destruction just to stay alive. The game's PC release never got the attention it deserved, which is a tragedy, as it was a pretty decent brawler. Soccer Kid is an Amiga platformer that got ported to PC. And good, cause it's a bloody unique one, as the only weapon and tool for traversal that you have at your disposal is your soccer ball. And even Alien Pirate Names Cup has stolen the World Cup trophy, and that sucks. But since he's a clumsy idiot, it's shattered and pieces spread across the globe. So you must travel through different countries using soccer tricks to defeat countless enemies and collect all the pieces. The physics of the ball were remarkably advanced for a 2D game of their era and the source of most fun in gameplay. Fun fact, in the United States, this game was renamed The Adventures of Kid Klitz because the publishers weren't sure if a soccer-themed platformer would sell well. Pinball Dreams 2 is a direct sequel to the classic Pinball Dreams, or to be more precise, to Pinball Fantasies, which was a real follow-up to Dreams. It features 4 distinct tables: Neptune, Safari, Revenge of the Robot Warriors and Stalled Terran. Mechanically, it's a pure physics simulation of pinball with high-fidelity DOS graphics and tracker-style music. And while it was a very solid game, it arrived at the moment when most players were either drifting away from the genre or slowly moving towards its newer 3D iterations. Now, I shouldn't blame the tech progression alone for Dreams 2's failure. A huge factor was the change of the developer too, as it was made by Spidersoft instead of Digital Illusions and they clearly weren't as proficient in the genre. Cave Wars is probably the most unique game in this entire video, and it's also a subterranean Forex-style strategy game. Instead of conquering a flat world, you battle over 5 layers of underground caves. You manage resources, research magic and technology, and wage war against 8 underground races. The story takes place on the planet Ibido, where those races fight for survival in the caverns beneath the surface. The multi-layered map adds a layer of tactical depth most 4X games lack, as you can live in relative peace with others on a couple of layers, all while leading bloodthirsty wars with them on others. Cave Wars was published by Avalon Hill, a company famous for legendary board games, which explains its board game-like rule set and surprisingly deep tactical focus. The Reap is an isometric shoot-'em-up that still looks shockingly slick for 1997. You pilot a high-tech combat craft on a mission to wipe out a mysterious mechanical force that's overrunning the planet. The game doesn't dwell on story, but the progression through its 14 zones, Arctic outposts buried in ice, deep ocean industrial complexes, scorching desert canyons and futuristic metropolis under siege paints a clear picture. Something hostile has taken control of these regions, and you're the one sent in to dismantle it piece by piece. Each zone ends with a massive boss encounter that pushes you closer to shutting down the invasion at its source. The Reap looks like a pre-rendered 3D movie in motion. It was developed by House Marquee, yes, the same studio that would eventually make Returnal on PS5, and you can absolutely see the early DNA of their arcade shooter obsession here. It's not a pure bullet hell game, but the screen fills with enough projectiles to make you nod and go, yep, that's House Marquee. Or if you me, then yeah, I'm once again dead. Both work as fine. Time Warriors is a 3D weapon-based versus fighting game. It's set in a fictional world where 8 warriors from different eras are summoned to battle for the ultimate power, and it features fully polygonal fighters and arenas that allow for actual 3D movement instead of simple side-scrolling. The roster spans wildly different cultures and time periods: Vikings, samurais, Egyptians, and anything else you can think of, and the game leans on that variety to sell its whole time-torn battleground premise. Time Warriors was developed by Silmarils, a French studio known for deep RPGs like Ishar series, and absolutely not at all, not even tiny bit, for fighting games. Yeah. Still, it was one of the few PC fighters of the era to natively support multiple 3D accelerator APIs, 3DFX, PowerVR, S3, you name it, giving it visuals that were surprisingly sharp for a 1997 PC brawler. Back in 1992, while everyone was losing their minds over Wolfenstein 3D, a little action stealth hybrid called Alcatraz was trying to sneak onto your hard drive. And while it managed to find its way into Amiga owners' hearts, it went largely ignored on PC. Developed by 221B Software and published by Infogrames, this is actually a spiritual sequel to the 1988 hit Hostages. A high-level drug kingpin named Miguel Tardies has taken over the world's most famous prison, and it's up to 2 commandos, Bert and Fist, some of the worst names you've heard in gaming, to infiltrate the island, neutralize the threat, and stop a literal mountain of narcotics from hitting the streets. Gameplay-wise, Alcatraz is a fascinating variety pack. You start with a side-scrolling infiltration where you're dodging searchlights and climbing walls. But once you get inside the buildings, it shifts into a first-person shooter-style perspective. It even featured simultaneous two-player co-op, which was a low-key blast. It's fun today because it keeps you on your toes while shifting perspectives and never outstays its welcome. Alcatraz marketed itself as using real-world Alcatraz blueprints for some of its level layouts, but I cannot tell you how much truth there is in that. Probably not much. In 1998, the racing world was obsessed with Need for Speed. But if you lived in Europe, you might have known this game as Nice too. I believe you still remember the first Nice we've covered a few weeks back, right? Stateside, however, it was released as Breakneck, though not until 2000, 2 years after it dropped in Europe. It's an arcade racer set in a gritty high-octane world where speed isn't just a goal, it's a requirement for survival. There isn't a deep lore here, but the vibe is pure 90s school, focusing on professional racing circuit that pushes physics to the absolute limit. So why is Breakneck a forgotten classic? The physics. For 1998, the car damage was revolutionary. The game features 10 core locations with dozens of variations, though the total count feels much higher thanks to mirrored and alternate layouts and a sense of speed that lives up to its name. Imagine a fantasy world in the 90s where NPCs don't just stand around waiting for you to click them. That was the pitch for Lure of the Temptress, a point-and-click adventure from 1992. You play as Dear Maud, a simple peasant who gets caught up in a rebellion against the sorceress Selina and her army of Squirrel, a brutal warrior race she controls to do her evil bidding. It's a classic hero's journey, but with a much darker, grittier medieval aesthetic than its contemporaries. The big hook here was the so-called virtual theater engine. This was low-key revolutionary, because all NPCs had their own schedules. They'd walk around town, patrol, chat or move between locations independently of your actions, which made the world feel alive and still kinda does even 30 years later. Lure of the Temptress was the debut game from Revolution Software, the legends behind the iconic Broken Sword series. Published by Microsoft in 1998, Outwars is the ultimate Starship Troopers simulation that arrived just a bit too late to catch the movie hype. It's a third-person tactical shooter where you lead a member of the elite Space Marine, complete with high-tech power armor and jetpacks, against a swarm of insectoid aliens known as the Skulls. The plot spans multiple planets as you try to stop the alien hive mind from consuming humanity. You know, exactly like in that popular sci-fi movie. Only not really. Because in the movie, it was actually humans who were the villains. Watch it again today and you'll agree with me. The jetpack mechanics are the true star of the show. Navigating 3D space while managing squad commands felt incredibly advanced for the late 90s. It's still fun today because of that verticality that made it feel much more than a bog standard corridor shooter. If you like System Shock, you need to see where its DNA started. Cybercon 3 is an early first-person immersive simulation and a game that's definitely worth a look. The world has been taken over by a rogue supercomputer called Cybercon 3, and you're a lone insurgent sent inside its massive complex to shut it down from within. You know, like in the best action movies of the late 80s and early 90s. It's moody, atmospheric and deeply claustrophobic, and I'm sure you're going to love it. Cybercon 3 wasn't just a shooter, it was a hacking and exploration game through and through too. You had to manage your suit's power, solve environmental puzzles and navigate a large, interesting and structured, like multi-level complex world. Despite being a 1992 title, it featured a fully 3D engine with flat-shaded polygon graphics and dynamic light sourcing. Features that wouldn't become standard until Doom, or to be more correct, Quake, that popularized them years later. Sega's Model 2 arcade board might be responsible for Virtua Fighter, but it also gave us a much cooler, much grittier Last Bronx. Released on PC in 1998, it's a weapon-based fighter set in a stylized and neon-drenched New Tokyo. 8 different gangs are beating the absolute hell out of each other for dominance, each fighter rocking their own signature weapon, from nunchucks to wooden staves, and learning all their quirks was half the fun. The other half was beating your friend to a pulp. In-game, obviously, it has to be said to keep the YouTube gods content. What a weird era we're living in. Last Bronx is incredibly fast. Unlike Soul Calibur's, which feels more epic, Last Bronx feels like a straight-up street brawl with rules written in chalk. The combo strings are deep, snappy and still satisfying decades later. Fun fact, all the characters were motion captured by real martial artists and the stages are based on real Tokyo locations like Shinjuku and Shibuya. In the world of 1992 RPGs, Shadowlands was doing something no one else dared. It's an isometric party-based RPG where you lead 4 adventurers into a dark, mysterious realm. Instead of a generic ancient evil or a great villain that you see in so many games, the story follows the spirit of a fallen warrior prince who guides 4 loyal adventurers back into the Shadowlands to avenge his death. Their journey is less about prophecy and more about reclaiming honor in a land twisted by corruption, but the way you interact with the world is anything but standard. The game features a unique photoscape lighting system, so your vision is entirely dependent on light sources. If your torch carrier dies, you are literally playing in the dark. It creates a level of tension and tactical depth that modern stealth RPGs still struggle to replicate. It's worth noting that in Shadowlands you can control each of your 4 party members independently in real time, which was a massive technical hurdle for the hardware of the era. Battle Girl is a fantastic title for a game and also 1998's answer to the never-asked question of what if asteroids had a baby with Tron. It's a vector-style arena shooter where you play as the titular Battle Girl, piloting her battlecraft to fight off malicious programmers unleashed by Terminus, a weapon of chaos threatening the Great Machine. The plot is minimal, it's all about the data stream aesthetic and saving the Great Machine. But honestly, do you need a deep plot in a shooter? Battle Girl is pure distilled arcade fun. The 360-degree movement is buttery smooth and the neon on black visuals are timeless and oddly cool. It's a hypnotic kind of a game. Once you start, get in the loop and feel comfortable pew-pew-pewing, the music and the visuals take over and before you realize it, you've been playing for 3 hours. Battle Girl was developed by Ultra United Games, a tiny indie team that specialized in high-speed arcade-style Mac and PC shooters. Lovecraftian horror meets the dungeon crawler in the legacy Realm of Terror. Instead of a fixed protagonist, you choose from several characters who all find themselves inheriting an ominous Winthrop mansion, a sprawling estate that turns out to be a gateway to another dimension full of cosmic nightmares. It's a first-person RPG that swaps high fantasy tropes for sanity-shredding monsters, occult rituals, and a constant sense that something ancient is watching you. The atmosphere in the legacy hits way harder than you'd expect from an early 90s PC title. The mansion feels alive with every corridor hiding something dangerous, useful or just deeply wrong. What makes it fun today is how genuinely tense it still is. The oppressive ambience, the brutal resource management and the constant pressure to survive make every step feel risky. It's a game that keeps you wired from start to finish. Keeping spare pair of pens while playing it is a genuine recommendation, note that down. Okay, don't laugh, but McDonaldland, also known as MC Kids, is legitimately one of the low-key best platformers on DOS. You play as Mick or Mac, 2 kids, on a quest to recover Ronald McDonald's stolen magic bag. It sounds like shovelware, but the moment you start moving, jumping and messing with the physics, you realize this thing has way more ambition than a fast food time has any right to. The DOS version keeps the same quirky momentum-based movement as the console original, and the way characters interact with slopes, platforms and moving objects gives the whole game a surprisingly tactile feel. The level design here is genius. It features gravity flipping mechanics, secret exits and complex puzzles that would make the Super Mario World blush. Well, most non-linear platformers would, but that's beside the point, which is this game is pretty cool. It's a platforming masterclass disguised as a Happy Meal ad. The way the game layers its mechanics, from block throwing to environmental switches to those wild upside-down sections, keeps every stage feeling like a new idea rather than a reskin of the last. And finally, we have arguably the best game in the entire video, Konami's tactical masterpiece, Vandal Heart. While the PlayStation version got the glory, the 1998 PC release brought this deep political drama to flickering monitors of our grey boxes. You follow Ash Lambert, a soldier who realizes his government is rot to the core and must lead a band of rebels to stop an ancient, world-ending power. It's heavy on betrayal, tragedy and political intrigue, and you're gonna fall in love with it. Two words: blood spurts. When you defeat an enemy in Vandal Hearts, they erupt in a literal fountain of gore. And I don't have to tell you, while it's perhaps unrealistic, it's also incredibly satisfying. The grid-based combat is tight, and the class promotion system keeps you invested in your squad all the way through. Vandal Hearts was not only one of the first strategy RPGs localized for the West, but it was one of the earliest tactical RPGs to hit North America, paving the way for Final Fantasy Tactics. First up, we're crash landing into one of the most brutal survival games ever made, Robinson's Requiem. It casts you as an officer for the Alien World Exploration Department. Your ship is sabotaged and you're dumped onto the planet Zarathustra, nicknamed Prison. It's effectively a literal dumping ground for the galaxy's worst criminals, and you're one of the unlucky souls sent there. Robinson's Requiem isn't just a walk in the park. It's a hardcore simulation of pain and suffering. At least it feels like it. You have to track your body temperature, heart rate and even handle infections. If a limb becomes gangrenous, you may need to perform an in-game amputation to survive, which makes the survival systems feel brutally realistic and decades ahead of its time. It's fun today because it's so unapologetically difficult. It actually makes modern survival games look like a vacation. Next, we have Nova 9, The Return of Gear Draxon. This is a first-person tactical tank simulation and a sequel to the legendary Stellar 7. The big bad, Gear Draxon, survived the last game and he's back with a vengeance. You know, like villains tend to do. So you have to pilot the Raven tank through 9 distinct alien worlds to put him down for good. Each world is a mix of arena combat and varied environmental challenges. One level might have a low gravity, while another changes movement physics. In short, it varies and keeps the game interesting. It's basically a boss rush vibe, before that was even a thing. Fun fact, Nova 9 was developed by Dynamics, the masters of 3D sim era, and it features some of the best early 90s polygon art you'll ever see. This is a personal favorite of mine. I played it on Amiga, I played it on PC, and if it ever releases on anything else, you can bet your sweet ass that I will play it there too. In Super Frog, you play as a prince who is turned into a frog by an evil witch who kidnaps his bride-to-be. While sulking by the stream, he finds a bottle of Lucozade, yeah, really, the energy drink from Great Britain, which gives him super strength, speed, flight and a snazzy cape. Not necessarily in that order or all at once. This game is buttery smooth. It was Team 17's proof that Amiga, well, and PC too, could do console-quality platformers with massive, non-linear designed levels, beautiful graphics and sounds, and more hidden secrets than you'd thought possible. It's a joy to play today because the controls are pixel-perfect and gameplay addictive. After years, Super Frog got a remake released on Steam, but don't play that one, it actually kinda sucks. Every good retro video should have at least one racer, and today I've banked on Roll Cage. This is a high-octane combat racer set in the future. There's no deep lore in this one, just fast cars, incredible speeds, big guns, and zero respect for the laws of physics. The most interesting feature of Roll Cage is its design. Your car has massive wheels that allow you to drive on walls and ceilings and even upside down. So if you flip over, it doesn't matter, you just keep going. The sense of speed is absolutely breakneck and still puts modern racers to shame. Here's a total curveball, and also a favorite of a friend, a lovely lady who runs her tea and floppy disk channel, also on YouTube. Check her out, she's fun. Callahan's Cross Time Saloon is based on the books by Spider Robinson, and it's a point-and-click adventure where you play as Jake Stonebender. You're hanging out at the bar where the patrons aren't locals, they're time travelers, aliens and even talking dogs. It's a game where you get to quote-unquote win by being nice, and it's not something you hear often these days. Unlike most adventures, where you use logic, or game logic, here you solve puzzles through empathy, puns and folk songs. It's incredibly witty and lighthearted, and it's a breath of fresh air in a stale by 1997 genre. It's fun today because the writing is world-class and because there's still nothing like it. Shadow Company Left 4 Dead is a gritty tactical RTS. Think Jagged Alliance only in full 3D and not running in turns. You lead a squad of elite mercenaries who are betrayed and left for dead in Angola. You have to complete contracts to survive while hunting down the Shadow Corporation that sold you out. In Shadow Company, you get to manage your mercs inventory, use stealth to your advantage and set up deadly ambushes. Did I say get to? I meant you have to, cause otherwise you're dead. The level of tactical freedom that it offered is insane for 1999. It also stood out for its fully rotatable 3D camera and sandbox emission design, which gave players multiple ways to approach objectives. Ever wanted to be a slumlord with a heart of coal? Yeah, I know what I said. Constructor is a city builder where you run a construction firm with a slight mobster undertones. So you're not just building houses, you're competing with rival companies who want to see you bankrupt. And sometimes you do it by means that are, well, questionable to say the least. The genius part of Constructor is the undesirables mechanic, meaning you can hire hippies to start a protest at the rival site or thugs to beat up their workers, among others. It's chaotic, stressful and darkly hilarious. It's fun today because there really isn't anything like it. It's SimCity meets The Sopranos and it's a blast. In Zul 2, you play as, well, Zul, the ninja from the Nth Dimension who returns to save the world from the mental block, a villain who wants to banish imagination. It's originally an Amiga game that later hit PC, but it's basically the same title. Zul 2 is a frantic, colorful platformer where you can climb many if not most surfaces, defeat countless enemies by either jumping on them or via spin attack, and collect colorful pickups, which are mostly sweets. Zul 2 fixed a lot of complaints from the first game, making the levels easier to navigate and gameplay more fluid. Zul 2 leaned into weird, candy-themed worlds and arcade polish. ZZT looks like a collection of colored text mode blocks, but it's actually a revolution. ZZT is an ASCII-based action-adventure and game creation system all rolled into one. The main adventure, Town of ZZT, involves a simple quest to find purple keys and save the town. It sounds very basic, and truth be told it kinda is, but it's also so much more. In ZZT you move with arrows and shoot by holding shift. And that's it. Nothing more to it, you've learned everything that there is about the game. but the scripting language it came with, the so-called ZZT-OOP, allowed people to make RPGs, text adventures and more. The limit was the creator's imagination. And as the time showed, they had no limits and thousands of adventures were created for ZZT. Fun fact, ZZT was the first game created by Tim Sweeney, the founder of Epic Mega Games and later the creator of the Unreal Engine. And Fortnite. Let's not forget about Fortnite. Redline is a hybrid of first-person shooter and a car combat game. It is set in 2066, when the world is a dead wasteland. The rich people live in the blue zones, and the poor, the outsiders, fight for scraps in the red zones. And you naturally play as an outsider caught in a gang war. The coolest part about Redline is that you can hop out of your heavily armed vehicle at any time to enter buildings on foot, then jump back in and speed off. The transition is seamless and felt like magic in 1999. It's fun today because that genre mashing still feels fresh despite the graphics and controls being a bit dated. And finally, we have a first-person RPG in the vein of Dungeon Master and also a 1995 Atari Falcon original that landed on PC 2 years later. In Towers to Plight of the Stargazer, you explore the massive Tower of Dagan in the land of Laminae. Lord Dagan, a stargazer, has gone mad, and his tower has become a labyrinth of traps and monsters that someone has to clear up. And that someone is obviously you. It's a grid-based dungeon crawler with heavy focus on atmosphere and environmental puzzles. It's still fun to play today for the RPG fan who love a good sink your teeth in challenge and who enjoy classic grid-based design. If you're not into RPGs though, it's not gonna be one to change your mind about them. Let's start with bizarrely addictive German import game, Crime Fighter. This is basically a strategy simulation RPG where you decide to stop being a productive member of society and become a crime lord instead. You start as a lowly purse snatcher or a lollipop taker in a small city, gradually moving to more serious crimes, but the goal is to build a massive gang, equip them with guns to the teeth, and pull off bank robberies and kidnappings to rule the underworld. Each crime type even has its own little minigame, from Sokoban-style puzzles to sneaking past guards or brawling. It's honestly shocking how fun ironically titled Crime Fighter was for 1993. You move around a top-down city map in real time, expanding your evil empire's reach, getting into turn-based fights with police or rival gangs. Crime Fighter may feel a bit clunky today, but it's still deeply compelling. And especially that it can be played by up to 4 players on same PC, battling for control of the same city. Next is Infestation from Psygnosis. This is a first-person sci-fi action-adventure that feels as if it was inspired by the Aliens movie. You play as Cal Solar, sent to a research station on a moon called Zelos that's gone dark. I'm sure it's not a surprise when you learn that it's actually infested with alien eggs that are about to hatch. Your job is to track down and poison all 167 eggs with cyanide gas before they spread. And survive, you should survive too, if possible. Infestation is pure atmosphere. In classic Psygnosis fashion, the graphics were way ahead of the curve, creating this incredibly claustrophobic metallic nightmare that was equally as disturbing as it was fascinating. You have to manage your oxygen supply and battery power while hunting for keycards and dodging automated defenses. Infestation still holds up because that sense of isolation and dread is truly timeless. It's a tense, lonely and surprisingly tough first-person 3D dungeon crawler set in space. Hitting the mid-90s, we have Baryon. This is a vertical scrolling shooter out of Korea that somehow flew completely under the radar in the West. The plot is your standard save the universe from an alien armada stuff, so you're essentially piloting one of 2 advanced strike ships deep into hostile alien territory, pushing through increasingly aggressive waves of Xenos as humanity's last line of defense. But you don't play this for the story. You play it for explosive weapons, different enemies, fun bosses, and a feeling of grandiose when you leave a path of death and destruction behind. Brilliance is shockingly polished. Playing it felt like having a high-end arcade cabinet right on your DOS PC. The VGA graphics are crisp and colorful, the scrolling is super fast, and the rock soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. It's got huge bosses and a great weapon upgrade system, so traits of the arcade's best hits, and honestly it wouldn't look alien on a cabinet in a smoky corner of some long-forgotten arcade. If you love twitchy shoot-em-ups, this is a forgotten masterpiece that feels incredibly responsive even today. Let's rewind back to the 1990 for the Day of the Viper. This one sits in that strange space between a first-person shooter and a dungeon crawler, back when nobody had quite figured out what the first-person action was supposed to look like. You play as the Viper 5 droid, dropped into a series of abandoned high-security buildings that have been overrun by malfunctioning defense robots. Your job is simple in theory. Explore each maze-like facility, track down the scattered floppy disk and use them to reboot the planetary defense network before everything goes completely off the rails. Before Wolfenstein 3D laid down the law on how an FPS should feel, games like Day of the Viper were throwing ideas at the wall just to see what stuck. It's real-time first-person movement through tight corridors with robots popping out of nowhere and a surprisingly sleek automap that's just a godsend. The hook is that the progression comes from finding the right discs and upgrades hidden around each level, slowly turning your little droid into something that can actually survive the deeper floors. It's a fascinating snapshot of that proto-FPS era, and navigating those neon-lit labyrinths still has a certain charm. Now, it's time for something incredibly dense, Valhalla, also known as Ragnarok. This is a graphical proto-roguelike rooted heavily in Norse mythology. The world is ending, because the Ragnarok is already unfolding and you have to find a way to stop it. The plot is massive, involving gods, giants and sprawling quests across handcrafted but highly variable world. You're not just surviving, you're completing mythic tasks like returning divine artifact, freeing Balder and helping the good gods win the final battle. If you think modern sandbox games are complex, Valhalla will melt your brain. The level of interaction that it offers for 1992 is truly insane. You can talk to almost any creature, eat almost anything, polymorph into different beasts to gain their abilities, and use the environment in endlessly creative ways. It's brutally difficult and has a steep learning curve, but the sheer depth of its systems make every playthrough feel like a unique chaotic story generation machine. Sticking with 1990, we have a Legend of Fairgale. This is a hardcore first-person RPG, very much in the vein of the Bard's Tale games. The setting is kinda gloomy. Elves have suddenly begun attacking the kingdom after falling into a mysterious madness, and humans and dwarves are going insane too. You need to put together a party of braves and travel across the land to uncover the source of the corruption. What made Legend of Fairgale stand out was its depth. I mean, even the character creation at the game start lets you choose from multiple races and classes, each with different attributes and language skills. Also, unlike many dungeon crawlers of the time, it wasn't just about underground mazes. You had a massive overland wilderness to explore between towns and dungeons. The turn-based combat is tactical and unforgiving, and a pleasure to master. It's a grindy, old-school experience, but deeply satisfying if you love mapping out dungeons and are persistent enough to overcome the high entry threshold. Let's brighten up things a little with Quick the Thunder Rabbit from 1994. It's a fast, colorful platformer that absolutely wears its Sonic inspiration on its sleeve. Originally released on the Amiga, it aimed to bring that console-style speed and flair to home computers. Story-wise, there isn't much to dwell on. Quick just blasts through vibrant worlds because that's what mascot platformers did in the 90s. And honestly, that's all you really need to have or know. What does matter, however, is how surprisingly well Quick plays. Smooth scrolling, punchy controls, bright visuals and levels that branch into multiple routes, it all comes together into a genuinely fun, replayable platformer. Along the way you can grab power-ups like speed boosts, energy pickups and food and water, which matter more than you'd expect because the game actually tracks Quick's hunger and thirst separately. It's a quirky little system that adds just enough personality without slowing things down. And the end result is just pure energetic 90s platforming that slipped through the cracks while the big names hog the spotlight. Moving to 1995, we have a game that was way ahead of its time, Warhammer Shadow of the Horned Rat. You lead a mercenary company called Grudgebringers, commanded by Morgan Bernhardt, taking contracts to fight orcs and the Ratman Skaven who are working on the Grey Sirtan Cool in a plot to devastate the Empire. Shadow of the Horned Rat was one of the very first true real-time tactics games that played out in full 3D. You have to manage unit formations, morale, flanking maneuvers and magic spells, and all of that in real time on a sprawling, beautiful fantasy battlefield. It is brutally punishing. Units that die are gone forever, and you have to manage your mercenary finances between missions. It's a stressful, difficult, and absolutely rewarding tactical masterpiece that laid the groundwork for its direct sequel Dark Omen, and later the DNA that Total War would build on. Back to 1990 for a quirky one, Treasure Trap. You play a deep-sea diver exploring a wreck of a ship called the Esmeralda, looking for gold while avoiding angry sea life. It's played from an isometric perspective, which always makes the movement a bit tricky, but when you get used to it, you'll find that it actually works quite well. Treasure Trap is basically an action puzzle game. You're pushing blocks and dodging crabs, but the main hook is that you can launch smart fishes, trained piranhas that destroy every enemy in the room. But since they are a limited resource, you have to use them strategically. Treasure Trap feels more like a forgotten console game or ZX Spectrum original than a typical DOS title, and it's full of charm. Next up is Circuit's Edge, an Infocom-published adventure based on George Alec Effinger's cyberpunk novel When Gravity Fails. You play as Maurice Adrien, I hope I pronounced it properly, a private eye in the Budayan, a crime-soaked entertainment district in the Middle Eastern city that was partly inspired by New Orleans. You've been framed for murder and have to clear your name in a world addicted to plugging personality chips directly into their brains. Circuit's Edge is a fascinating hybrid of illustrated first-person exploration and deep, text-based interaction. The setting is incredibly unique. It's not your usual neon Tokyo cyberpunk or another western take on the genre. It's a dark, gritty world where tradition, vice and tech collide, and the Budayan feels alive in a way few games from 1990 managed. The main mechanic involves buying and slotting mods into your skull, giving you new and useful skills and personalities. Need to be intimidating? Slot a tough guy personality mod. Need to understand tech? Slot a skill chip. I'm sure you get the gist. So to survive and clear your name, you'll have to use these tools efficiently and never let your guard down. It's a narrative trip definitely worth taking. Sometimes you just need to play something truly stupid to relax. Enter Invasion of the Mutant Space Bats of Doom, released in 1995 by Pop Software. The plot? It's actually right in the title. There are mutant space bats, of Doom no less, and you're a lone pilot who just happens to stumble into them on a routine mission. So, you have a ship, everyone's counting on you, good luck. This is a pure adrenaline shot arcade shooter with vertical scrolling in the style of Galaga but cranked up to 11, maybe 12. The VGA graphics pop off the screen, the action is incredibly fast and the power-ups are completely ridiculous. There are 66 short stages grouped in repeating patterns of enemy types. It doesn't try to be smart or deep, it shoots for short, action-packed bursts of fun and it absolutely succeeds. It's the perfect digital caffeine hit. Next up, we've got a 1993 hidden gem from Taiwan, Prince of Evil. You play a Chinese hero battling through swarms of demons and undead as you push toward the titular Prince of Evil. Imagine Gauntlet, but filtered through early 90s Taiwanese fantasy and cranked up until it starts smoking. It's loud, it's weird, and it absolutely shouldn't go as hard as it does. And yet somehow it's a blast. Prince of Evil is an isometric action game with a pace that feels almost unhinged for something from 1993. Instead of careful, deliberate strikes, you're firing off magical projectiles in non-stop streams while the screen floods with ghosts, monsters and every other creature Chinese folklore can throw at you. It's chaotic, visually noisy and backed by a surprisingly catchy soundtrack. A simple idea executed with so much energy that it still pulls you in today. Released by Epic Mega Games, Overkill is a vertical scrolling shoot-'em-up that feels like pure early 90s DOS adrenaline. You play as a lone pilot tasked with liberating 6 planets that have been overrun by a brutal alien force. Each world has been captured, occupied and twisted into a hostile war zone, and your job is to blast your way through the planetary defenses, clear the surface and ultimately destroy the alien overseer controlling the system. It's a classic sci-fi pulp. One pilot, one ship and an entire solar system depending on you. Overkill's secret sauce, added in its amazing title, is its upgrade system. As you tear through enemy waves, you collect stolen tech and power-ups that transform your ship into a flying tank. It's a simple system, but it gives the game a satisfying sense of progression, especially since the difficulty curve depends heavily on how well you manage your loadout. And for a 1992 DOS title, the explosions, sprites and scrolling effects still look surprisingly sharp today. Overkill may not be as famous as Raptor or Tyrion, but it absolutely deserves a spot in the DOS Shoot-'em-up Hall of Fame. If you love Arthurian legend, Spirit of Excalibur is one of the most ambitious attempts the 90s ever made to turn the myth into a strategy-adventure hybrid. The game picks up immediately after King Arthur's death, with Britain collapsing into chaos as rival Lord Saxon invaders and dark sorcery all rush to fill the power vacuum. You command the surviving Knights of the Round Table as you try to reunite the fractured kingdom, restore order and ultimately recover Excalibur itself. Spirit of Excalibur blends grand strategy map management with point-and-click adventure sequences, and that mix is still unique today. You move your knights across Britain in real time, managing morale, supplies and loyalty, but when they reach a location, the game shifts into a detailed adventure scene where you talk to NPCs, solve puzzles and complete quests. Your knights' honor, conduct and battlefield performance directly affect how the people treat you and whether lords will join your cause. And yes, the game encourages you to use healers, seers and magical units, which give the whole campaign a mystical myth-infused flavor that sets it apart from the more grounded medieval strategy titles of the era. Before he became the face of Wing Commander and later Star Citizen, Chris Roberts worked on a gritty post-apocalyptic action RPG called Bad Blood, no relation to Taylor Swift's song. The world has been devastated by the nuclear war, leaving humanity split between pure humans living in fortified cities and mutated survivors scrapping by in the wasteland. One of the human leaders, Lord Dominix, is preparing to launch a genocidal war to wipe out the mutants, and you're sent out as a scout to prevent that final conflict. But unlike many RPGs of the era, you don't play a predefined hero. You actually choose from 3 different characters, and your mission is to navigate the wasteland, uncover Dominix's plans and decide whether the world gets saved or burns. Bad Blood is a top-down real-time action RPG where you explore towns, talk to NPCs, pick up weapons and blast mutants with everything from shotguns to grenades. It's still worth playing today because it was quietly ahead of its time, offering a branching narrative, multiple playable characters and a world that reacts to your choices. It's messy and weird, but that's exactly why it stands out. It's a forgotten stepping stone between times of lore and the cinematic ambition that would soon explode into Wing Commander. Software 2000 is, or rather was, a studio better known for management sims than gunslinging. And that's exactly why Wild West World is such a curveball. Despite the shootout-friendly title, this isn't an action game. It's a full-blown frontier life simulator. You play as Jack Potter, a newcomer trying to claw his way up from Broke Ranch Hand to one of the most influential figures in the region. To get there, you'll be buying land, running farms, raising cattle, opening mines, hiring workers, and dealing with the harsh economics of the Old West. You're not just fighting outlaws, you're fighting time, competition, and the brutal frontier economy itself. Wild West World is a surprisingly deep hybrid of business management and light action sequences. One moment you're juggling production chains, employee salaries and fluctuating market prices, and the next you're handling raids, duels or sabotage attempts that can wipe out your profits. It's still fun today because the economic simulation feels unexpectedly modern. Your decisions ripple through the entire region, affecting prosperity, prices and even how rival settlers behave. Wild West World remains one of Software 2000's most ambitious experiments ever. Synonymous to most of us with Worms Team 17 took a stylish detour in 1996 into arcade racing with World Rally Fever Born on the Road. And it's still one of the most visually striking racers of the 1990s. You pick from a cast of anime-inspired characters, each with their own personality and ending, as you compete in a globe-spanning championship that takes you from the Scottish Highlands to neon-drenched Tokyo streets. There isn't a deep narrative in the game, but the rivalries and character-specific finales give the whole thing a unique feel and energy that makes every race feel like a showdown. World Rally Fever is a sprite-scrolling arcade racer very much in the lineage of Outrun, but with one major twist. You're not just steering, you're hopping over obstacles, bouncing off ramps and shave seconds of your time. The art style is timeless, the soundtrack is pure mid-90s energy and the campaign still feels fast, colorful and ridiculously fun. It's one of those games that never got the recognition it deserved but absolutely holds up today. Set in a bleak vision of the year 2021, so past, Scorcher imagines a future where traditional sports have been replaced by lethal, high-speed races. You pilot one of those futuristic Scorchers, essentially a motorized sphere bike hybrid, competing in the underground global network league. The world outside is collapsing, oxygen is scarce, and humanity clings to survival inside industrial megastructures. It's pure 90s dystopian sci-fi, and it absolutely leans into that vibe. Scorcher was a technical showcase for its time. It pushed PC hardware with advanced lighting, texture warping and smooth 3D acceleration. It's fast, moody and visually striking. But it launched in the same window as Quake and Tomb Raider, which completely overshadowed it. Still, Scorcher remains one of the most stylish and technically impressive forgotten racers of the 1990s. Avalon is one of those late 90s freeware RPGs that punches way above its weight. Developed by Meek Outpost, a name I'm sure you've never heard of, it takes place in the year 3045 on a remote human colony that suddenly comes under attack from a mysterious monsters. You play as Mace, a young villager who becomes the unlikely hero tasked with saving the colony, uncovering what the creatures are and tracking down the missing leaders who vanished during the first wave of attacks. It's a classic small hero big threat setup, but wrapped in a surprisingly atmospheric sci-fi world built entirely by a tiny indie team. Avalon is a top-down RPG with turn-based combat, puzzle solving and a distinctly anime-inspired art style. Everything, the music, the code, the art, was created from scratch and the result feels like a passion project that could have easily been a commercial release. The game mixes exploration with tactical battles and environmental puzzles. And while it's simple by modern standards, it has that unmistakable late DOS mixed with SNES charm. It's one of the best examples of how creative the freeware sim was in the late 90s, long before the indie games became a mainstream concept. Known internationally as Supreme Snowboarding, Border Zone was one of the defining PC extreme sports titles of the late 90s. Developed by Housemarque, it puts you in the boots of several pro riders competing across global locations like the Alps, the Rockies and the Japanese Highlands. There's no storyline in the game, but the career mode leans hard into that late 90s snowboarding culture. Sponsorships, rankings and the feeling that snowboarding was the coolest thing on earth. Well, second coolest right after skateboarding. And yes, I should know, I participated in neither. At launch, Supreme Snowboarding was widely praised as the most realistic snowboarding sim on PC thanks to its physics-driven carving system and smooth controls. The game features disciplines, each demanding a different mastery of momentum and edge control. For $19.99, the visuals were jaw-dropping. Dynamic snow spray, reflective ice and buttery-smooth slopes that made it feel far more polished than many console competitors like Cool Borders. It's one of those games that quietly set a standard, even if it never got the same spotlight as Tony Hawk or SSX. Nocturne is survival horror at its most stylish gothic. Released in 1999, it stars the Stranger, a trenchcoat-wearing operative working for a secret US government agency called Spook House, an organization founded by Teddy Roosevelt to combat supernatural threats. The game is divided into 4 cinematic acts, each with self-contained monster hunting story. A werewolf-infested German village, a cursed mansion in the American South, an Egyptian tomb-crawling bandit horrors and a Prohibition-era Chicago showdown with zombie mobsters. The Stranger himself is a cold, enigmatic figure, and the game leans hard into that pulpy 1930s monster movie atmosphere. Nocturne was a technical powerhouse for its time. Built on Terminal Reality's Nocturne engine, it featured real-time shadows, volumetric fog and dynamic lighting that pushed late 90s PCs to their absolute limits. The Stranger dual-wields pistols with laser sights, and the way those beams cut through the darkness is still iconic. The game's moody visuals and dramatic camera angles give it a unique blend of Resident Evil and film noir. Set in the same whimsical universe as the Lemmings series, The Adventures of Lomax follows the lone, heroic Lemming Knight Lomax, who is the only one immune to a dark spell cast by the villainous Evil Ed. The spell has twisted the peaceful lemming population into monsters, turning their once cheerful world into a gauntlet of traps, hazards and corrupted creatures. Lomax sets out on a rescue mission across multiple teamed lemming clans, determined to break the curse and save his friends. It's a surprisingly charming fantasy adventure that expands the Lemmings lore into a full platforming epic. Lomax is a gorgeous 2D platformer built by Psygnosis, and you can absolutely see the studio's signature style. Lomax incorporates classic Lemming abilities as power-ups, so you can dig through walls, build bridges, or float like a helicopter to reach new areas. The hand-drawn animation is some of the smoothest of the entire 32-bit era, with vibrant backgrounds and fluid character movement that still looks stunning today. It's one of those games that didn't get the mainstream attention at release, but has aged like fine wine. And no, I don't mean that it's sour and gives you runs, I mean it plays like a charm and keeps you wanting more. We're closing today's video with a space combat code classic starring the legendary Bruce Campbell, Tachyon: The Fringe. You play as Jake Logan, a veteran pilot who gets framed for a terrorist attack and exiled to the lawless outer rim of the galaxy known as the Fringe. Out there, 2 major factions are locked in a cold war: the corporate powerhouse Gaspan and the rock colonists known as the Bora. You can choose which side to support, and that choice completely changes the ultimate fate of the Fringe. It's one of the earliest space simulations to offer a truly branching campaign. Tachyon is a first-person space combat simulation with heavy emphasis on freedom and tactical movement. You can customize your ships, upgrade weapon systems and even hire wingmen to help you in large-scale battles. The standout feature is its Newtonian sliding flight model, which lets you face one direction while drifting in another, a mechanic that adds a surprising amount of depth and skill to dogfights. And of course Bruce Campbell's performance as Jake Logan ties it all together with sarcastic one-liners and B-movie charm. Tekken didn't get the spotlight it deserved, but it remains one of the most unique and stylish space sims of its era. We're starting our this journey with Fatal Fumes, an arcade top-down racer. There isn't a complex narrative here, I mean, why would there be any, it's a racer, and the whole appeal is pure adrenaline of mastering each track and outpacing the AI. The courses themselves aren't packed with hazards weapon-wielding lunatics, they're simply well-designed, fast and demanding enough to keep you dialed in from start to finish. Fatal Fumes plays like a grittier, more grounded take on Micro Machines, except this time you're racing on proper circuits instead of kitchen table and garden paths. You get 12 cars to choose from, each with its own handling quirks, and the game even includes a surprisingly robust track editor that was genuinely ahead of its time in 1996. It's still a blast to play, thanks to its smooth scrolling, responsive controls, and that just one more lap energy that good top-down racers always manage to tap into. Next up is BioFreaks, a brutal 3D fighter developed and published by Midway. It's set in a dystopian Neo-America, where the government has collapsed and the country has splintered into independent states now controlled by giant corporations. And these megacorps settle their disputes by unleashing engineered warriors in the arena, the biological flying robotic enhanced armor killing synthoids, or BioFreaks for short. Talking about grim soon-to-be reality. This game was wild, because it combined traditional fighting with vertical movement using jet boosters, giving you just enough aerial freedom to pull off some chaotic mid-air maneuvers. It's still fun to revisit because of its sheer 90s edge, I'm talking full limb dismemberment and over-the-top finishing moves kinda like those in Mortal Kombat. And despite the arcade-style presentation, the PC version was considered the definitive way to play, thanks to its higher resolution and cleaner textures compared to the N64 and PlayStation ports. Now let's look at the true French curiosity, Golden Eagle. This is an action-adventure game by Loriciel, which you've no doubt recognized from our earlier videos. You play as a special agent tasked with infiltrating a massive, dangerous city-like complex to find 5 pieces of a legendary Golden Eagle statue that the evil priest Nahamur stole and hid throughout the area. Golden Eagle is an exploration-heavy game that uses a traditional side-view perspective to present its action-packed adventure. You have to run, jump, duck, and even crawl to avoid traps, beat enemies, and find all the missing pieces of the statue, all while mapping out the confusing layout of the old structure. The game also features computer terminals that provide hints of map fragments, safes you can open using found codes or special tools, and a handful of environmental puzzles. So in short, fun, and yes, even more fun. Coming all the way from Brazil, we have Guimo. You take control of a lizard-like alien warrior, the titular Guimo, who is the last hope for his world of Bitland after a dimensional invasion led by the sinister Nectarion and his army. It's a classic save-the-world plot, but told through some of the most vibrant run-and-gunning pixel art of the era. The gameplay is incredibly fluid and features large multi-path levels packed with secrets and enemies that encourage exploration. Your health is represented by the pair of eyes at the bottom left of the screen getting progressively more red as you take damage, and the graphics overall are rather nice for a DOS platformer. The music reminds me of the good old Amiga days, but that's just me. What is not me though is Guimo's innovation. It features summonable helper creatures and enemy AI that actually has them coordinate attacks. It's perhaps not immediately noticeable, but when you do, 2 words, mind blown. When we were playing our Dooms and Warcrafts, back in South Korea they were making some incredible DOS platformers like Dokkaebi Gaganda. which roughly means the goblins are coming. And they are. You choose between two actually, Kobe or Komi, and they are on a mission to save the land from an evil force. Kobe uses a club, while Komi sports a massive hammer. The whole game is steeped in traditional Korean folklore, giving it a very distinct aesthetic. Dokaebi Gaganda is a fast-paced, colorful platformer that feels like a mix between Sonic and Wonder Boy. It's a blast because of the responsive combat and the variety of items you can collect, like traditional rice balls to restore health. Interestingly, while it looks cute and was marketed for all ages, it's actually notoriously difficult, requiring pixel-perfect jumps and quick reflexes that will challenge even veteran platformer fans. Stages are linear, but grouped into themed sets, each ending with a boss fight, so approach it only if your reactions are as keen today as they were in 1995. Don't let the name confuse you with anything packed with action, because Crusader Adventure Out of Time is a point-and-click adventure. You play as a disgraced French lord named Artois, who is sent to redeem himself by traveling to the Holy Lands to escort the True Cross to safety. And to do so you'll need to complete a series of tasks, many of which are explicitly educational, teaching you about medieval warfare, politics and daily life.
The fortress of Dun-le-Roi, that insignificant pimple on the face of...
The game is heavy on FMV, digitized graphics and historical puzzles, making it feel like a high-budget interactive history movie. It's fascinating today because it actually tries to stay historically grounded while throwing you into a mystery. And it's because it was developed by Index Plus, who specialized in cultural media, so the attention to architectural and historical detail in the environments is surprisingly high for a 1997 edutainment title. This one is a real obscure cult legend. Alien Anarchy is actually the international title for the Brazilian FPS Incidente em Varginha, a game whose plot mixes fact and fiction inspired by a real-life 1996 Varginha UFO incident in Brazil. You play as a civilian who witnesses the alien escape and gets caught up in a massive government cover-up involving alien crushes and secret underground bases. You're tasked with finding and recovering the alien's captured spaceship by any and all means necessary. As an FPS, it's remarkably gritty and uses Brazilian urban and rural environments as the backdrop for its shootouts. It's fun to play today for the sheer X-Files vibe it captures perfectly. One of the most interesting facts about it is that after its release, the developers actually signed a deal with the US Special Forces to use their engine for training simulations, which is not bad for a game about Brazilian aliens. If you were looking for an alternative to Need for Speed in '97, or just didn't have enough money to get the big racer of the decade, you might have found GT Racing 97 instead. Developed by Blue Sphere, this is a pure arcade racer. There's naturally no story here, just a grueling championship across international tracks in high-performance cars, with stupid but fast-sounding names like Hurricane and Predator. GT Racing 97 is fast, really fast, and it handles like a dream if you enjoy the arcade-leaning style of the late 90s racers. It's fun because it features multiple camera angles and a very competitive AI that doesn't just let you win by rubber banding you close enough to always have a shot at the top spot. Despite being a budget-friendly title, GT Racing 97 actually featured a full replay system that allowed you to watch your race from various cinematic angles, a feature that was unusually advanced for a supposedly mid-tier DOS racer. In 1996, Ubisoft published this hidden gem, The Adventures of Valdo and Marie. Set in the 16th century, you follow Valdo, a young Portuguese sailor, and Marie, a Japanese girl, as they journey from Europe to Japan. It's a story about friendship, navigation, and the first cultural exchanges between East and West. As you seek the scattered pieces of a treasure map, you'll deal with pirates, sharks, storms, and more. The gameplay is a mix of point-and-click adventure and educational puzzles, most of which are inventory-based, but some may be resolved with dialogues, logic or even action-based minigames, which is great because variety is fun. It's a joy to look at even today because of the beautiful hand-drawn art style that resembles a classic animated film. Interestingly, the game was a massive hit in France, selling over 100,000 copies. Yet it remains almost entirely invisible to the rest of English-speaking PC world. Now we head to Poland, for one of the games that is largely unknown, despite me talking about it all the freaking time. Franco: The Crazy Revenge. This is a legendary brutal Polish beat-em-up. After a gang attack leaves his friend Alex dead, Franco goes on a rampage through the real-life streets of Szczecin, one of the Poland's major cities, to take down Klocek, the gangster responsible, and his army of goons. It's raw, it's gritty, and it's unapologetically creative in ways of covering the screen with ketchup. Franco plays like a classic side-scroller but with a much darker street-level tone, so it's not as polished, but it more than makes up for it with brutality. It's fun because of the sheer variety of weird enemies, including code-flashing perverts and naturally bucketfuls of ketchup. Yeah, for the safety of this channel, I'm claiming it's all ketchup. A fun fact, the game was originally written for the Amiga before being ported to DOS, and it remains a massive cult icon in Poland, even spawning a modern spiritual successor, Franco 2: No Mercy, a sequel that I've yet to play. So if you have, let me know in the comments below, I'm curious if it's actually good. Our second to last stop is the secret hit and a mystery game of today's video, Dark Side Story. This Korean brawler follows a schoolgirl named Suhi. When her father, a dentist, is kidnapped from his clinic, Suhi doesn't call the cops, she puts on her sneakers and starts beating up every thug in town to find him, breaking jaws and knees one goon at a time on her way to her father. Interestingly enough, other than the combat, you also get to extensively talk to the town's inhabitants in search for any helpful bits of information. This adventure-style exploration is a core part of the game, in difference to traditional beat-em-ups. The combat mechanics are surprisingly deep in Dark Side Story, with Hungry Point and Feeling Point system that affects Suhi's moveset based on her mood and energy. There are naturally special attacks in the game too, and they deplete health, which can be replenished with HP restoring items hidden all around under destructible objects. You can also unlock additional playable characters later on if you persevere. Dark Side Story is still a blast because of the high quality pixel art and the humorous over-the-top animations and fun combat. And finally, the masterpiece, the legendary two-late game of the 90s, Heart of Darkness. Created by Eric Chahi, the mind behind Another World, you play as Andy, a boy who travels to the Darklands after a solar eclipse whisked away his dog, Whiskey. His kidnapper is the Master of Darkness, a shadow-like entity commanding the army of specters. It's a cinematic platformer that feels like a dark, M-rated Spielberg movie. You know what, that whole Master of Darkness thing kinda reminds me of the Darkman, a villain opposing to the Daemon in Charlie's play from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Does anyone else remember that? Never mind, ignore me. The gameplay of Heart of Darkness sticks to the one screen at a time puzzle platforming formula, where deaths are frequent and often rather gruesome. So it's as much of an action platformer as it is a title, requiring you to memorize what, where and when to do, not to fall victim to an unbeatable trap or a swarm of enemies. It's fun today because the animation is still some of the best in gaming history. It infamously took over 5 years to develop, often rounded up to 6, and by the time it released in 1998, the work was long into all things 3D, leaving this 2D epic in the shadows. Thanks for exploring the shadows of gaming history with me. Stick around because the next wave of forgotten brilliance is already loading.